First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Ramp. Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's business cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp's software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/easy. Ramp.com/easy. RAMP.com/easy.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
On the line right now is Dave Zumpano. David, good morning. Thanks for coming on the radio.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you this morning?
Good. Dave, of course, is with the State Planning Law Center. I'm trying to play a Cars song as your intro, but it's just not playing on my computer for some reason. Our internet tends to go up and down around here.
Only when we need it, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's usually, right, it's always there when you don't need it. But this is kind of an interesting story. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about the planning that goes, how important it is to plan. And, we talk about it, but how much do we really do it, and how much because we never think that, we're invincible. You never think there's an end until there is. But there's a story out there about Rick Ocasek from the Cars that is really pretty sad.
Yep. Yeah. He was married for a long time, but had started a divorce proceeding, and kind of in the middle of it, he died, and his wife was surprised to find out she was not in his will.
She was not in his will, and I don't think the kids were either, were they?
The kids with her, yeah. He had other kids, but the kids that he had with her were not. And it was a long-term marriage, over 20 years.
Oh, my gosh.
And she was surprised and heartbroken and disappointed. But like 20 different issues pop up here related to planning, we always we don't expect we're going to die. And he died young. And the question becomes, okay, what does happen? Well, the first thing to note is that whenever you start a divorce proceeding, that pretty much nullifies your rights toward any bequests when when one of you dies. But on the flip side, people who are not in a divorce proceeding need to understand that if you die without a will, or if your spouse does a will, you cannot actually disinherit your spouse by law. It's called dower rights. It actually goes back to Old England. And in New York State, if you're married, your spouse has to get at least 33% of your estate. And if you have children, if you don't have children, then I think it goes up to 50%. And so what happens is, it's by law you can't disinherit. Now again, if an estate, if a divorce proceeding did trigger, or a separation, that would sever those rights, because the rights would be presumed to have been addressed in the divorce proceeding. So whatever money she was entitled to should have happened through the divorce.
So if you are, you're a couple, you guys never get married, you split up, you can't stand each other, you die. She is entitled to at least 33% of whatever you have, whether you guys were living together or not.
Yes, but not unless you have to be married. I don't know if
but
you
if
said
there,
that.
right, but if there's a divorce, then everything's gone. It better be in the will if you want to take care of that person that helped you grow your life, and maybe you were together for a long time.
Because a divorce is presumed to split that equity, right?
Got it.
So whatever you are entitled to through the divorce would probably more than what you would be entitled to at death. But there's another similar parallel to this, and that's people who might be in a second marriage. So what happens there is really interesting, because let's say you got your kids, she's got her kids, well, and you love each other, you get married. The question is, who gets your money in the end, her kids or your kids? Well, you think it's going to be your kids. She thinks it's going to be her kids.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it goes to what we call the last man standing. So if I die and I left everything to my wife, then when she dies, it probably goes to her kids. If she died and it all came to me, then it would go to my kids, right? Well, there's planning to avoid that so that you can actually provide for your second spouse during their life or until they get remarried, if that's the triggering point. And then you can make sure that after your spouse is taken care of for the period that you want to do to each other, that what's left goes back to your children and what's left of hers goes back to her children, or 50-50 or whatever you decide in that second marriage. That's really important. Probably more important than divorce is when you're in second marriages, to make sure, the stuff gets to the people you want, the way you want, when you want.
I have somebody piping in here this morning, and I know who this person is, so it's kind of funny. But saying, let's remind everyone that it might be her money shared with him plays the same role, and that would be true, right? Obviously, it might be the woman. It might be the breadwinner, maybe the woman. And I would respond to that by saying, guys always die first. So, she'll live.
That's right. I'm using an analogy because you two are gentlemen, so I was just using that analogy.
Well,
however,
we appreciate the gentleman line there.
Whoever's money it is, yes.
Right. But the reality is, if you're not taking care of this behind the scenes before something bad happens, you're really lead up to whatever the law is, and anything could happen. Right?
Yeah, you should be the one deciding that.
Well, there's the magic button. Who do you want to decide, you or the government, right?
Yeah.
So the government has all kinds of rules. And here's the funny part. People don't realize this. If you don't have a will, then you, by default, the government's dictating what happens.
Right.
So, will, healthcare, proxy, power of attorney, those are the three essential documents. Will, to make sure your stuff gets to who you want it to, when you want it to. Healthcare proxy, to make sure there's someone to make healthcare decisions for you if you can't. Power of attorney, make sure there's someone to do legal and financial matters on your behalf if you're incapacitated and unable to. Three essential documents, really critically important.
Is there a percentage out there, I know this is an off-the-wall question, as to how many people, I don't know if it's the state or the country or in general, don't have a will or some instruction in here?
Yeah,
and
it's funny you ask me. Washington State University did a study. It's probably about 10 or 20 years old now. And the study said 1 in 5 Americans have an estate plan. So it's about 20%.
80% don't. Wow.
Yeah, and they said, hang on, it gets worse. They said of the 1 in 5 that had the estate plan, 1 of 5 of those had a plan that actually did what they thought it was going to do. So that tells you the breakdown, even when people are doing planning, understanding the plan they're doing. That's why we do the workshops to help educate people and get them to understand what are all the elements of an estate plan that you need to consider. So many times people think, I just get a will. Holy mackerel. Well, you don't know that if you have a will, but if you have a joint account, your joint account supersedes the will. They're like, what, huh? And so there's so many things. That's why they don't even work a lot of the times. 1 in 5 work, according to the Washington State University study. So some pretty amazing numbers. That means 4% of Americans have an estate plan that actually does what they thought it was going to do.
That's incredible.
On the Cars story, remember Rick Ocasek's wife was a supermodel, Paulina Porakova, and she was the hottest thing when the cars were beginning to decline. And she claims that she put all of her money from her supermodel career into their marriage, and she now, along with her kids, walk away with zilch. So,
well, again, that's a matter for the divorce proceeding.
Right.
So that's what she has to claim in the divorce proceeding, which is, by the way, is still alive. That still goes on despite the death.
The reality is, though, that once you get out of that proceeding, if he or she decides to find someone else and they're convinced that they shouldn't leave anything, there's no obligation at all for them to leave. Once you get outside of divorce, zero obligation, right?
Well, even outside divorce, I say it to everyday folks. Once you're out of the picture, the survivor can do whatever. There's no obligation to give it to kids, grandkids. They can give it to their new boyfriend, new girlfriend. We call it their new friend. Absolutely. And that's why planning's so important. You could provide that doesn't happen, too, if you want.
I have a two-parter here. Number one, what happens when – so here's the scenario. She dies. They have money. He's very old. He has caretakers, people that have family members, whatever, children. But all of a sudden, some hottie comes along and sweeps him off his feet and takes advantage. He decides to give everything to her. That's really what happens, right? There's really nothing you can do.
Happen. I think, right. If you're, you remember Anna Nicole Smith. That's what she was famous for, right?
That's another one. Yeah.
So, absolutely. And the problem is this: you, as the family member, have to prove after the fact that he was incompetent when he did that, or he didn't know what he was doing, which is very, very difficult to do.
Yeah.
It's a very low standard for him to understand what he's doing and to say it. And a lot of people, especially as they get older, this is really important, especially for the people listening. As they get older, they get feeble and weak and scared. And so I see this all the time. One child's taking care of mom or dad, and what ends up happening is that child convinces mom or dad to switch everything over to them because they're doing all the work. So I don't know if it's right or wrong, but we see that happening all the time.
That happens a lot. I know 2 stories where that has occurred, and the outcome was horrific, really sad.
Yeah.
And then finally, what do you advise people when they say, well, they're going to make me the the person in charge of the end, the executor of the estate. Be careful what you ask for. Is that correct?
Yeah, the executor's job is they actually don't have any power. They only have the authority to carry out the terms of your will. So they don't decide who gets what. They just kind of decide how and when. So there's a lot of discretion when you're administering an estate, right? You got to sell a house. So who do you list it with? How much you sell it for? All those are discretionary decisions of that executor.
Yeah.
So the executor is the person that stands in your shoes and carries out all of your wishes. But they are guided very closely by the court.
Okay.
So they're overseen by the judge and the court to make sure they're not doing anything outside what the will is provided for.
And then one more. Tim in Deansboro has a question. Tim, you're on with Dave Zumpano.
Good morning. My question is, the living wills that you can buy from Staples, are they legal?
Yes, they're legal. The problem with them is they're very basic, and they don't address any issues outside basic, what we call boilerplate language. The other problem is not so much the language, what they say, but the manner in which you execute them, which means you sign them. Most documents that we see that people get offline or through Staples, they don't execute them properly, and therefore they're invalid when they need them most. So it's very tricky. There's an old saying, you get what you pay for, but they are valid if they contain the terms and conditions that accommodate your needs, which, again, remember, 1 in 5 Americans have a plan, and 1 in 5 have plans that actually do what they think they're going to do. Here's a perfect example. People going to Staples and getting a form and thinking that's doing a whole bunch of stuff, and it really isn't. So that's been the biggest challenge. That's why we always recommend, getting educated and getting caught up on what are the elements and issues that you need to be concerned with.
All right, Tim.
Very good.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Okay. I didn't know you. I went to Staples. I got a chair. I got a cartridge for my printer and a will. I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. All right. Okay, David, how can people reach out to you? What's the best way?
Well, 2 ways. eplawcenter.com is our website where you can schedule a free complimentary workshop to learn about all the key issues. Or the law office phone number, 315-793-3622. Either one, we're happy to help anyway, no obligation.
All right. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day, Jeff.
All right. You do the same. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
This podcast is sponsored by Ramp. Are you the decision maker in your company? Consider this. For the first time in decades, there's a better option for a corporate card and spend management platform. Meet Ramp, the only corporate card and spend management system designed to help you spend less money so you can make more. Most corporate credit cards offer points as incentives, but those points amount to less than their worth in real cash value. Ramp's business cards offer you cash back, real money in your pocket. Plus, you control who spends what with each vendor. And Ramp's software collects and verifies receipts automatically, which means you'll stop wasteful spending and close your books in hours instead of days. Businesses that use Ramp add up to 5% to their bottom line the first year. If you're a decision maker, adding Ramp could be one of the best decisions you've ever made. And now get $250 when you join Ramp for free. Just go to ramp.com/easy. Ramp.com/easy. RAMP.com/easy.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members of FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.